I have 3 kids, so our grocery bill is massive. My husband works in tech, and I stay home raising our children, who are 10, 7, and 3. I shop at least twice a week, usually at the King Colin near our house, or sometimes the Target down the road. Those are basically the only options in our small town. We're an Italian family, and I'm 40 now, but this happened less than a year ago when I was still 39. I was running late on my shopping one day, so I went much later than usual. The King Colin closes at 10 p.m., and it was already past 9. I rushed over with my coupons and flyers. The kids were complaining there was nothing to eat in the house, so I needed to get a quick run in. Most days I have to bring my 3-year-old daughter, Haley, with me, but since it was late and my husband was home from work, I finally got to shop alone. That's a luxury for a mom of 3. I got to the store, which was nearly empty since closing time was approaching. I grabbed a cart and started moving quickly through the aisles, grabbing everything on my list and anything on sale. I was in the cereal aisle when I felt a tap on my shoulder. It startled me. I turned around and saw a very tanned man, about my height, wearing a baseball cap, a black t-shirt, a red zip-up hoodie, and jeans. He apologized for scaring me and said he'd been searching everywhere for a specific bag of chips he saw in my cart. He asked where I found them. I politely told him the aisle, but he said he'd checked and couldn't find them. So I actually walked him directly to the spot where I'd grabbed the chips. He thanked me with terrible breath, and I smiled and started to walk back to my cart. But then he kept talking. Pointless conversation about why he liked those chips so much. Something about the ingredients. Or maybe a lack of certain ingredients. I kept trying to edge back toward my cart, but he wouldn't take the hint. Then he paused awkwardly and said, "Wow, you're really pretty." I said, "Thank you," and told him I needed to finish my shopping before the store closed. I went back to my cart, but he followed me and kept talking. As politely as I could, I told him I just wanted to shop in peace. He finally seemed to get the message and walked away. But for the rest of my time in that store, I kept seeing him circling the aisles. Every time he passed the aisle I was in, he would slow down or even stop and just stare at me from down the row. Have you ever felt someone's eyes on you even when you can't see them? That's how this felt. I got increasingly uncomfortable and hurried through the rest of my shopping. When I finally finished, I went to the checkout. As I was emptying my cart, Red Hoodie Guy showed up with just 2 or 3 items and got in line right behind me. He didn't say a word anymore, but I could feel his gaze burning into the back of my head. I finished checking out, pushed my cart away, and he called out, "Have a good night, ma'am." I ignored him. As I was loading my groceries into my car, I spotted him in the parking lot. He was looking at me as he walked to his vehicle. He got into a beat-up old Honda that looked at least 30 years old, but he didn't turn the car on. He just sat there. I finally finished loading my car, got inside, started the engine, and drove out of the parking lot. I checked my rearview mirror a few times. No headlights behind me. I felt safe. It wasn't until I pulled into my driveway and looked to my left down the street that I realized something was wrong. A car was driving slowly down the road toward my house with its headlights off. It pulled to the curb a few houses down. It looked exactly like that beat-up Honda from the parking lot. I went inside and called my husband's name. He came downstairs looking concerned. I told him a creep had followed me home. He hurried outside to the front steps, but by then the car was already gone. The following weekend, late at night, we were all in bed when we heard shuffling outside in the side yard. I shook my husband awake and told him to go check. He went to slide the window open and saw someone right below it, trying to open the side gate to our backyard. But when the man heard the window open, he looked up and started to run. My husband grabbed the baseball bat from under our bed and ran outside. When he came back a minute later, he said he saw a car speeding down the street. He tried to chase it. He perfectly described that same beat-up Honda. It was definitely him. We called the police. Given how late it was, an officer arrived at our house in under 5 minutes. I described the man and his car as best as I could, and that was it. He never came back to our house, not after seeing my angry husband chasing his car on foot with a bat. When I was in college, I worked at a wall bounce. The one I worked at was open 24 hours, which meant some unlucky people had to work the overnight shift. I thought since I was 20 and in school, my boss would never put me on overnights. But unfortunately, when she saw my schedule and that I had Mondays and Wednesdays off, she saw me as the perfect person to stick on the overnight shift occasionally. One day I saw I was scheduled for a Tuesday night from midnight to 8 a.m. I had to triple check the schedule to make sure it was right. I felt sick. When I asked my supervisor why I was put on overnights, he told me if I'm over 18, I don't really have a choice. I considered quitting, but I needed the money, so I sucked it up and decided I'd do it this one time and then tell my boss I could never do it again, because I needed to study. I arrived at the store at midnight and relieved my coworker Amanda. Half the lights in the store were off to save electricity. There were actually a surprising number of customers when I got there, but past 1 a.m., the place was completely dead. Maybe 3 customers in the entire hour. As it got later, there were fewer and fewer customers. By past 2 a.m., I was as bored as humanly possible. There hadn't been a customer in over an hour. I started wondering if there were any other employees in the building. There had to be, right? They couldn't have a lone 20-year-old running the whole place by himself. There was this bald guy who looked like he could be a manager. He kept passing by the front registers every few minutes. He had a key ring attached to his khakis with at least 10 keys on it, and he was holding a small backpack-type bag. I called out, "Excuse me, are you the manager?" He came over and asked if it was my first day on the job. I said it was my first night shift. He shook my hand without giving me his name and asked if I could go to the back warehouse and organize the pallets. He said he'd watch the front. I didn't exactly know what that meant, but I figured I'd figure it out. I walked toward the back of the store. As I did, I saw him doing something to the entrance door. He was reaching for some switch on the side of it, like he was locking it. I made my way into the back warehouse, where I saw a tall man who looked about 30, wearing a manager's vest that said "Wall Bounds." He saw my apron and introduced himself as Rob, the night manager. I said, "Oh, I thought the guy in the front was the night manager." He looked puzzled and said, "Who?" When I described the bald man, he asked me to show him who I was talking about because he was the only manager on duty. We didn't even make it out of the warehouse before all the lights in the store turned off. Rob told me to wait in the warehouse while he checked out what was going on. I watched him walk through the warehouse doors into the darkness of the store. The only light out there came from the dairy coolers that were still on. I sat on a box on a pallet and was on my phone, trying to text any friends who might be awake about what was happening. Then I heard a door from inside the warehouse open. It came from the other side of the warehouse, separated by the freezer and dairy fridge. There were 2 ways in and out of the warehouse back into the store. I sat there, ears perked up, listening for any sound. Then I heard quiet, slow footsteps getting closer, followed by a voice saying, "Hey kid, you in here?" But it wasn't Rob's voice. It was that bald guy's voice. I hurried out of the warehouse doors into the store, but quietly. I jogged to the front of the store looking for Rob, but I couldn't find him. I called out his name. Nothing. I grabbed my jacket and tried to open the exit door. It wouldn't open automatically, so I tried to physically push it. It was locked. I heard footsteps approaching from behind me. I turned around and almost screamed, but I realized it was Rob. He flicked some lever on the top right of the door and unlocked it. He said in a panicked whisper to hurry and get outside. He followed right behind me. We left the store and he got straight on the phone with the police. I heard his whole conversation. He said he believed an armed man had locked himself into the wall bounds and was probably trying to rob the place. I told him to tell the police I thought the man was coming to harm me in the warehouse. He relayed that to the operator. He told me I should go wait in my car or leave, probably because he didn't want the store to be held liable if something happened. I went and sat in my car and just watched for a while. Within 10 minutes, at least 4 police cars were outside the store. They all went inside for a while. I didn't see what was going on, so I left. I didn't quit after that, though. The next time I went into work, my supervisor told me everything. The security footage showed that bald man circling the place, acting suspicious, checking if the coast was clear for whatever he was planning. After locking the doors, he cut the lights in the store. The cameras showed him going straight to the warehouse, the same place he told me to go. That's the scariest part to me. If he was armed and robbing the place, he could have been on his way to put a gun to my head. The camera showed him leaving through the emergency exit in the warehouse way before the police arrived. In the end, I never worked an overnight shift again after talking to my boss. I stayed at that job for another few months. I'm not sure if that man was ever identified,